can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing. It's myself and Paul today, and we are talking about Canelo Alvarez. That fight with Terence Crawford, fight of a generation, certainly the biggest fight to take place probably since Floyd Mayweather. Manny Pacquiao is creeping closer, so we thought time to start firing the Canelo content out. And the topic of this video today is just how long has Canelo got left, and maybe what does the remaining, well, the last few fights of his career look like. It's sort of no secret that he's coming towards the end. That's certainly the perception of boxing fans, people in the media. He signed a multi-fight deal with Turki Al-Sheikh, so we'll presume, for the sake of this video, that Canelo's only got 3 fights left, and we'll sort of see who we'd like those names to maybe be. Paul, come at you with a name. Hot at the minute, certainly in British shores. HAMZAH, SHEERAZ, obviously coming off a fantastic win over Edgar Berlanga, a common opponent with Canelo. A job much better done by HAMZAH SHEERAZ than Canelo did. Canelo taking the stretch by Berlanga. SHEERAZ dispatching of him in 5 rounds, was it? Very conclusive fashion. Is that a fight you think could happen, Paul?
Yeah, thanks to having me on, Danny. Is it a fight I think could happen? See, to be honest, I'm going to say no, because as much as I want it to happen, I think it would be a cracking fight and a massive opportunity for HAMZAH SHEERAZ. I don't think, if you're Canelo, kind of what's in that for you. To be perfectly honest, you're on the back 9. You've only got a few fights left. That HAMZAH SHEERAZ one is very high risk, and probably still, when you're talking about Canelo, low reward really, because if he was to win the fight, you'd be like, oh well, Sheeraz he's still not in his prime yet. He's yet to come into his prime. So it'd be like, oh, we expected you to win. But if he was to lose, it would be a disaster. Maybe people are thinking that it would maybe tarnish his legacy somewhat, Canelo. So do I see it happening? I don't actually see it happening. As much as I would love it to, and don't know whether it's maybe I don't know whether I'm getting high on Shiraz's last performance against Berlanga, but I think he looks so good at 168 pounds. I'd actually have Shiraz beating Canelo at this stage. What about you?
Wouldn't disagree with you. Said the same thing when me and Niall reacted to the Shiraz Berlanga fight. I'm sort of torn because I agree with everything you've said about Canelo's probably looked at that fight, having shared the ring with Berlanga himself, and thinking, do I really need that? But at the same time, HAMZAH SHEERAZ, very much Riyadh season, Turki Al-Sheikh's golden boy, Riyadh season ambassador. We saw Turkey getting very animated ringside at HAMZAH SHEERAZ fights, certainly more so than in some of the fights we see on those Riyadh season cards. And I think that's a fight he'll be pushing to happen. I think he would love to make Canelo versus HAMZAH SHEERAZ. So potentially there could be some conflict there. I think Canelo's purses for the fights he's agreed with Riyadh season have been agreed. I'm not sure in terms of specific opponents. I don't think that's something that could be agreed that far in advance with, how easily the landscape can change in terms of wins, losses, injury and whatever. But I think that's the fight that they'll be pushing for over in Saudi Arabia. So, don't know. Canelo's been pretty stubborn in the past. You look at the whole David Benavidez saga. By hook or by crook, he wasn't going to fight him. But Turki Al-Sheikh wasn't really involved then, and he's a man used to getting his own way. So I'm sort of on the fence. But let's go for another British, well, say super middleweight. Middleweight at the minute has been at super middleweight, and maybe a fight, I don't know, that Canelo would fancy. Not saying he doesn't fancy the HAMZAH SHEERAZ, but on paper and to the eye test, a more favourable matchup for Canelo, and that's Chris Eubank Jr. He's expressed a desire in going back up to super middleweight to take on Canelo Alvarez. A bigger star now than he's ever been off the back of the fight with Conor Benn. Rematch, gone a bit quiet. We are expecting that to happen potentially in November. If the Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn rematch is to happen later on this year and Eubank comes through unscathed, no foregone conclusion, particularly if it's the same weight and rehydration stipulations as first time, is that a fight you could see happening?
Yeah, mate. I definitely could see that fight happening. I think for the couple of reasons. I think, as you said, there's never been a better time to be a Eubank. I think the stock's really, really high at the minute. Even though there still seems to be there's been a bit of a lull, and it's gone fairly quiet since their fight with Conor Benn in April. But yeah, I think when you look at it from Canelo's perspective, it's like Eubank Jr. is a massive name, especially if you have senior involved as well. If you're Canelo, you look at that and think that it's still a pretty easy fight, do you? I think you probably do, to be perfectly honest. even though arguably Chris Eubank Jr.'s best performances, or some of them have been up at super middle. Yeah, so I think I could actually see that fight happening. It's a massive fight in terms of name value and star attraction. Again, Turkey Al Sheikh got a good relationship, it seems, with Chris Eubank Jr. as well. So again, don't think it would be too difficult maybe to make that fight. I think whether you believe him or not, Eubank Jr. has talked of his desire to fight Canelo before. And as I said at the beginning of this, I think that Canelo would look at that fight and think it's still a very favourable matchup for him, and he get paid a ton of money to do it. So I could see that happening, but still make Canelo a favourite there. And you know what? I hope kind of hope it does happen. Eubank gets his massive payday and then I don't know retires or whatever he wants to do because yeah, why not? I'm all for it.
Yeah, I could see that one happening as well. I would imagine that's a fight Canelo would want. It's a fight Eubank, as you say, has made no secret of the fact he wants. I think it's probably a bigger fight. It's definitely a bigger fight than Canelo versus HAMZAH SHEERAZ worldwide. Eubank's a crossover star in the UK. Canelo's still one of the biggest stars in worldwide boxing, one of the faces of boxing. So yeah, again, that one obviously hangs on, of course, whatever happens with the Eubank Ben situation. And of course, Canelo has to get past Terence Crawford, which is definitely no guarantee, especially if we're going off the William Skull performance. But last sort of segment of the video, Paul, I want you to put your matchmaker's hat on. We've discussed about what's maybe being talked about in the media and what's most likely, given what various people involved in boxing want, what Canelo maybe wants. But who would you want to see him fight? You've had mixed opinions on Canelo in the past, as have I. Maybe shirking some of the matchups we want to see him, particularly in the later stages of his career. But in an ideal world, if he could do whatever you want, if you were Canelo's advisor and he listened to every word you said, who would you be having him in with? Who would you want to see?
I've still really wanted him to see him in there with David Benavidez. However, I think there is almost zero chance of that fight happening. To be perfectly honest. But as you asked me the question, in an ideal world, if I had my way, that's the one I'm making. I think David Benavidez stops Canelo. And yeah, I think it's a massive fight for Mexico as well. Like, I mean, that would be absolutely enormous. However, I don't see it happening because I don't. Now that Benavidez is up at light heavy as well, I don't see Canelo fighting him at light heavy. If he was going to fight him, I think it would have to be at 168. So I can't really see it happening. Bivol rematch is another one potentially. But again, don't think that's a winnable fight now at all for Bivol, for Canelo, should I say, at this stage, particularly how Bivol looked in the two Beterbiev fights, particularly the rematch as well. So yeah, there are two that I would like to see him in with, but mainly because I just want to see him get beat.
Very honest of you, mate. Yeah, I think if that Benavidez fight was to have materialized, say, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I think it would have been seen as a 50-50 fight. But as time creeps on and Benavidez going like that and Canelo looks to be going like that, I think most people would have Benavidez a clear favourite now. Same with the Bivol rematch up at light heavyweight. I don't know. I don't see that going well for Canelo. So I'll throw out a couple of names that would be more likely to take place at super middleweight. Again, unlikely to happen. Christian Mbili, I think that'd be an entertaining fight. He's got the WBC interim, I believe, although it's quite strange when Canelo had that WBC title, Mauricio Suleiman, I think the only mandatory he imposed on him was Anvi Yildirim. What was that, 4 years ago? And Christian Mbili has been given two mandatory defences of his interim world titles, so doesn't seem that the politics in boxing are too keen on that one. I'd be happy to watch that. And another one, I think, again, not going to happen, but if Janibek was to move up to super middleweight, I think Janibek's one of the most underrated fighters in boxing. I think he's head and shoulders the best middleweight in the world. I think if he moved up to super middleweight, he could be very well be the best at that weight too. I think that would be well, I was going to say a good fight for Canelo, a good fight to watch. It'd be a big fight for Janibek, but again, unlikely to happen. Canelo's become very careful with his opponent selection since suffering that defeat to Dimitri Bivol, and yeah, don't think we're going to see any of the fights me and you've just mentioned in the last segment. But we could be wrong. He could surprise us, could jump in with Benavidez, Janibek, Bivol, all back to back, but somehow I doubt it. Oh, that is all we have time for today. I really enjoyed that chat. Let us know in the comments, folks, who you think Canelo could potentially fight if he comes through the fight with Terence Crawford. Rematch, probably not beyond the realms of possibility there, either with this, the way rematch clauses seem to spring up in boxing. But let us know your thoughts. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to ESBR Boxing, and we'll catch you next time. Paul, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.